What would drive a millionaire CEO to stop everything for a shivering nurse at a deserted bus stop? He didn't know her name. She didn't ask for help, but something in her eyes made him say just one thing. "You're coming with me." He took her in that night, and what happened after would change both their lives forever. Snow. The snow is falling heavier. The snow is falling heavier than in previous years, blanketing the streets of New York in a thick, silent layer of white. Midnight has long passed, and midnight has long passed, and the city that never sleeps seems to have finally fallen asleep under the weight of the storm. The streetlights cast a hazy orange light through the fog and the howling wind between the empty buildings. A sleek black Bentley moves slowly down the deserted street, its tires crunching on the snow. Inside, Alexander Reed sits with one hand on the leather-wrapped steering wheel, the other adjusting the heating system. On the leather-wrapped steering wheel, the outside world is blurred in a blanket of white, and he has no reason to drive at this hour, except that he often cannot sleep. No reason to drive at this hour. As he turns onto Lexington Avenue, he notices something. Someone at the bus station. Lexington Avenue. He squints, slowing the car down until it comes to a complete stop. He squints, slowing the car down until there, huddled on the cold metal bench, is a young woman in a nurse's uniform. Her blonde hair is soaked in snow, her shoulders shivering under a thin coat. She sits stiffly, her hands tucked into her pockets, eyes unfocused, shivering under a thin coat. She sits. The phone lies motionless on her lap, the screen dark, out of battery. Stiffly, her hands tucked into her pockets, Alexander's eyebrows furrow. Without thinking, he shifts the car into park and steps outside. The cold hits him immediately, piercing through his coat, but he hardly notices. He approaches her with quiet steps, the snow muffling the sound of his shoes. Notice. He approaches her with, she doesn't look up until he speaks. Quiet steps, the snow muffling the sound. "You're coming with me." She whips her head toward him, her eyes wide with worry. Speaks. "You're coming with me." She, "Excuse me, I don't even know you." Whips her head toward him, her eyes wide with he looks straight at her, his voice calm but firm. Worry. "Excuse me, I don't even know I won't leave you here to freeze. You." He looks straight at her. "That's not happening." She quickly stands up, instinctively putting a few steps between them. "I'm fine," she says, although her voice trembles and her teeth chatter, puts a few steps between them. I'm waiting for the next bus." "That's fine," she said, although her voice, "There's no next bus," he replied, glancing at the empty street. "Not tonight. Everything is closed. No taxis, no trains, and you have to wear surgical clothes in a snowstorm. Everything is closed. No taxis, no trains, and I can understand," she emphasized, wrapping her arms tightly around herself. "I can understand," she emphasized. He didn't move closer, but something in his gaze kept her from looking away. Herself. He didn't move closer, but it wasn't pity. It wasn't attraction, but something else, like an unspoken recognition. Attraction, but something else, like he took off his long black coat and handed it to her. An unspoken recognition. "Put this on." She hesitated, then slowly reached out and draped it over her shoulders. It was warm, faintly scented with cedar and something expensive, and immediately eased the biting cold. "I can take you home," he said simply. "Where do you live, Farlam?" she replied cautiously. Eased the biting cold. "I can, too far to walk, and there's no way a taxi could get through here. My car has heating, and I'm not a psycho," cautiously replied. "Too far to walk, and you can sit in the back. I'll take you wherever you need to go, or you can stay out here and risk hypothermia. It's your choice." She looked at him for a long time. "To go, or you can stay out here and risk?" He looked familiar, although she couldn't understand why. "Hypothermia. It's your choice." She looked, his face had that sharp classic structure you'd see in magazines. Cold gray eyes, a perfectly tailored suit beneath a dark cashmere scarf, hair just starting to glisten with snow. Magazines. Cold gray eyes. He looked like someone who had never stood at a freezing bus stop in his life. Hair just starting to glisten, contrary to her better judgment. Her body had made the decision first. Never stood at a freezing bus stop, and her legs moved before her voice did. "All right," she mumbled, and he opened the car door. Her legs moved before her voice did. "All right." She slipped inside, unsure if this was a mistake, uncertain about anything except the warmth that immediately enveloped her. The door slammed shut, blocking the wind. She watched him walk around the car and into the seat beside her, then glance at her once before pulling away from the curb. Neither of them said anything as the car moved down the snow-covered street. The stranger in the car was silent, unbound by anything except the impossible moment and the compassion of a man who had never stopped for anyone until tonight. The noise of the heater filled the silence between them as the Bentley glided over the snow-covered streets. The windows slowly cleared from the fog, revealing a sparkling city blanketed in white snow. Inside the car, the warmth was almost inside the car. The warmth was almost shocking after the biting cold outside. Lily sat stiffly in the passenger seat, her hands still wrapped tightly around the coat he gave her. The coat he gave her. She pulled it closer. She pulled it in closer, inhaling the unfamiliar yet pleasant scent embedded in the fabric. Pleasant scent embedded in the fabric. It smelled of money. Yes, but also of something calm, composed, and safe. Something calm, composed, and safe. She glanced at the man driving. He hadn't said another word since she got in the car. Said another word since he seemed completely focused on the road, his sharp features illuminated by the dashboard lights. The road, his sharp features illuminated by the everything about him, was meticulous. His posture, his watch, even the way he held the steering wheel. His watch, even the way he held "thank you," she said softly, more out of habit than expectation. The steering wheel. "Thank you," she said softly. He doesn't look at her. "You don't have to thank me." Look at her. "You don't have to. She must be freezing." She hesitated. "Thank me. She must be freezing. But most people wouldn't stop." A faint smile appeared at the corners of his lips. "Stop." A faint smile appeared at "I'm not most people." The response might sound arrogant, but it wasn't. It's just the truth. They fell silent again, and Lily leaned back in her seat. The truth. They fell silent again, and Lily exhaustion washed over her as she finally felt warm. Exhaustion washed over her as 14 hours straight on the hospital floor, staff shortages, no lunch break, and a patient dressed in a coat in her last hour, and a patient dressed in a she hadn't meant to miss the last bus. But things like that kept happening. Last bus. But things like that kept her life was a balancing act on the edge of collapse. Rent overdue, her second job cutting back her hours, and the student loan collector calling constantly. He turned the car into an underground garage. Lily's eyes widened as they walked down the private entrance lined with polished concrete and soft lighting. The private entrance lined with polished concrete. This isn't an ordinary apartment building. Do you live here? An ordinary apartment building. Do you live here? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Now, he replied. Putting the car in park. She asked, raising an eyebrow. Now. Come on, I'm staying here tonight. She blinked. On. I'm staying here tonight. She wait. What, this isn't a question, he said, stepping out of the car. I need a place to sleep. You have more than enough room. Her instincts flared up. He can't just stay at a stranger's house. He paused by the open passenger door, looking into her eyes without forcing or pleading. No strings attached. I'll take the guest room. Her eyes without forcing or pleading. No strings attached. Lock the door if you want, but you can't go outside in that storm. She bit her lip, half of her mind telling her this was crazy. The other half weighed down by the fatigue of remembering that freezing bench. After a moment, she stepped out of the car. Inside, the apartment was even more beautiful than she had expected. Out of the car. Inside, the apartment had floor-to-ceiling glass windows, warm light, a glowing fireplace, and a silence so complete it felt sacred. Warm light, a glowing fireplace, and an elegant space, but not cold. A silence so complete it felt sacred, sleek, masculine, and understated. An elegant space, but not cold. You can take the room on the left, he said, pointing towards the hallway. Sleek, masculine, and understated. You can. There's clean clothes in the closet. They will fit you loosely, but still warm. She slowly turned to look at him. Why are you doing this? He shrugged lightly, slowly turned to look at him. Why are you doing this? Because I can, and because I have a conscience. That answer lingered in her mind as she stepped into the living room. Because I have a conscience. The bed was perfectly made. That answer lingered in her mind as she stepped. The sheets smelled of lavender and something expensive. Perfectly made. The sheets smelled of everything was pristine, but didn't feel empty. It felt like someone lived there, but was unaffected, like a person who has everything but still feels nothing at all. 15 minutes later, wearing the oversized gray sweater and sweatpants that nearly swallowed her, Lily quietly walked into the kitchen, and sweatpants that nearly she intended to ask for water but stood frozen at the door. Swallowing herself, Lily walked quietly. Alexander was standing and cooking by the stove, into the kitchen. She intended to ask not a personal chef, not takeout, just him in a white t-shirt and dark pants stirring something in a small pot. He glanced over and noticed her watching him. "I thought maybe you were hungry." She blinked. "What are you doing hungry?" She blinked. "What are you doing ramen?" He said simply. "Ramen," he said simply. "Nothing fancy, just warm." "Fancy, just warm." She stepped closer. She stepped closer, surprised to see him looking normal again. Surprised to see him looking normal again. Just a man, not a billionaire. Just someone who, for some reason, saw her and fed her. Saw her and fed her. When she sat at the counter, he placed a bowl in front of her and handed her a pair of chopsticks. She stared at him, more confused than ever. "Darling, not like I expected." He looked at her with a puzzled expression. Her with a puzzled expression. You too. Morning light streamed through the tall windows, casting a gentle golden glow across the living room. Lily woke up to the scent of coffee wafting through the apartment and the unusual comfort of sheets, softer than any she had ever had. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then everything returned to normal. Snow, the Bentley, the stranger who had cooked her noodles at 2 a.m. 2 a.m. She found a note on the kitchen counter written in precise cursive, with taxi money on the table. "You can leave whenever you want, but if you want to talk more, call me." Below was a crisp $100 bill and a crisp $100 bill and a business card. Alexander Reed. Reed Global Investment Company. She stared at that name for a long time. It rang a faint bell. Long time. It rang a faint bell. Articles in magazines, financial blogs, some Forbes lists she had skimmed through while checking out at a grocery store. Turns out he is that kind of person. She took the money, but left the card. 3 days had passed. She didn't call. But on the evening of Wednesday, while volunteering at a community health fair organized by the hospital, she saw him again. He was standing in the back. He was standing at the back of the event hall, silent and still among the crowd of nurses, patients, and donors bustling about. There was no fanfare. No fanfare. No entourage. Just him, dressed in a charcoal gray suit, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes scanning the room until they landed on her. Lily was helping an elderly man sit down for a free medical checkup. He had no identification, no insurance, no family, just an old coat and a gentle smile. She knelt beside him, speaking softly, taking his blood pressure with the gentleness of someone who believes everyone deserves respect, regardless of their circumstances. From across the room, Alexander observed. He didn't move, didn't interrupt, but something in his expression had changed, something subtle yet profound. As the lines of people thinned and the crowd began to disperse, Lily turned and recognized him. She hesitated and then approached him. "Did you?" "Did you follow me here?" she asked, half teasing, half unsure. "No," he said. "I know," he said. "I sponsor this program every year. I didn't expect to see you." She crossed her arms. "All right, here I am." He looked. "All right, here I am." He looked around the hall. You volunteered after a 14-hour shift. She shrugged. People? People need help. I know what it's like to have nothing." He nodded silently for a moment and then said, "My mother was a nurse. He would often take me to places like this when I was young. I hated it back then. But now, I think I understand." Lily tilted her head. You've never mentioned that." "There are many things I don't mention," he replied, the corners of his mouth curling into a smile. "Mention," he replied, the corners of his mouth. They stood in silence for a moment. Then he said, "Come with me, just for coffee." In silence for a moment. Then he said, "Come, no pressure." She hesitated again, but this time she nodded. "For me, just drinking coffee. No pressure." Coffee turned into a walk. The walk turned into sitting on a bench at the edge of Central Park, where the snow had melted just enough to reveal the ground beneath. They didn't talk about money or careers or anything impressive. They talked about insomnia, about the terrible coffee in the cafeteria, about the books they had started reading but never finished. They talked about insomnia, about it had become a routine. In the following weeks, they continued to meet, started reading but never finished. It had become or maybe not by chance. She began to wonder, but she never asked. Sometimes they would meet at the hospital cafeteria late at night. Sometimes he would send a driver took her to a quiet place where he was already waiting with hot chocolate or a bag of her favorite chips. He used to ask calmly, and he used to ask calmly and remember, they never labeled what they were doing. They never held hands, but it felt like there was something more real than anything she had ever known before. Not dating. They were two people not dating. They were two people trying to find a way to feel alive again, One night, as they sat next to each other on the steps of the Metropolitan Museum, sharing a silence filled with unspoken thoughts, she looked at him and said, "I'm not what people say I am." He turned to her, his voice low. "Are you not say about me?" He turned to her. She smiled. "What do they say about me that you're too kind to yourself?" She shrugged. "That's not kindness. That's just humanity." He looked at her for a long time. "Then perhaps I'm trying to remember my own." She didn't answer. She just leaned back and looked up at the twinkling stars through the New York fog. "For a while. Then perhaps I'm trying, and for the first time in a long while." The night became gentle. Alexander Reed had always been someone who appreciated silence. That was where he felt most in control, most himself. And for the first time in a long while, success came early, perhaps too early. The night became gentle. Alexander Reed, by the age of 30, he had built and sold his first technology company, then moved into finance, where his brutal accuracy earned him a reputation that made people either envious or completely avoid him. But money never filled the silence in his life. His first tech company, then shifted to finance. He just lightly tapped the wall. He was only 12 when his mother passed away. Reputation made people cancer was swift and ruthless. She was once a nurse at a small community hospital, the kind of nurse who stayed late with dying patients, who wrapped blankets around the homeless, who kissed her son goodbye, even when she could barely stand from exhaustion. His father, a cold and distant man, obsessed with business, didn't know what to do with a grieving child, homeless, who kissed her son goodbye. So, he sent Alexander off to boarding school and buried himself in quarterly reports. Alexander learned to need no one, to expect no warmth, to hope for no tenderness. By the age of 25, he had millions of dollars. By the age of 30, he had billions, but none of it dulled the memory of his mother. Hope for no tenderness. By the age of 25, he had in his private office, hidden behind glass walls and polished walnut wood, there was a single photo he never moved. A faded picture of her in her nurse's uniform, smiling at the camera as if nothing could go wrong. There was a single photo, Lily's uniform was almost identical, never moved. A faded picture of her that was the first thing that impressed him about her, even before her shaking hands or her stubborn voice. Wrong. He never told Lily. Instead, he started doing what he did best, operating in silence. Through discreet legal channels, he tracked down her remaining student loans and paid them off. He established a medical scholarship in her name at the nursing school she once attended. No announcements, no credits. He noticed her hospital had struggled to maintain the low-income care program, especially during the cold months. Announcements, no credits. He noticed a quiet donation came, of course, anonymously, enough to sustain the program for the next 3 years. He was very careful. He never let her see the strings he was pulling behind the curtain to sustain the program for the next 3 years. To Lily, he was still just Alexander, strange, quiet, generous in little things, but never ostentatious. Curtain. To Lily, he was still just, she had no idea how closely he followed her world. Alexander, strange, quiet, generous in. He often changes his meeting routes just to sit at the back of a conference that she could attend. Or he once waited in his car for hours outside her hospital during a snowstorm just to ensure she arrived for her night shift safely. Waited in his car for hours outside. He tells himself it's not about control. It's about making sure she has the freedom to continue doing what she loves. He has seen what exhaustion does to people like her. He saw that in his mother's eyes near the end of her life. He won't to let Lily carry that same burden. At least not alone. At least not alone. Some nights after one of their quiet, unstructured meetings, he would go home and step into his office, staring at his mother's picture. He would think about how Lily smiles at her patients, about how fiercely she protects those with nothing, whispering to the picture, You would love her. He used to whisper to the picture, I still do, but he never said those words to Lily. Not yet. The way to open the door to that part of he is still learning how to open the door to that part of himself. The part that was buried long ago when a boy in a black suit stood next to a coffin and stopped believing that the world could be soft. Lily is changing that. With each carefree laugh, each late-night story over takeout containers and mismatched teacups, she has shattered the armor he has worn for decades. For her in the dark. He doesn't do that, but she doesn't know what he has done for her in the dark. He doesn't do that out of gratitude. He does it because there is something in her that makes the silence inside him feel less endless. And for a man like Alexander Reed, that is everything. Antiseptic and overbrewed coffee. The hospital corridors smell of antiseptic and overbrewed coffee. Nurses moving swiftly from room to room. Doctors shout orders into phones. And the overhead lights flicker weakly like a tired heart, refusing to stop. In room 412, a figure lies motionless on the narrow hospital bed, on the pillow. Like sunlight shining through her pale skin, slow breaths, her blonde hair spread across the pillow, like sunlight shining through, dimmed by exhaustion. Lily had collapsed during her shift right in the hallway between two patient rooms. She hadn't eaten for 12 hours, had worked a double shift, and while on another shift, her knees buckled and her vision went dark. When someone helped her up, she was unconscious. Her records. But someone still showed up. The no relatives were listed in her records. But someone still showed up. Call, without hesitation, without delay, when Alexander's black car pulled into the hospital parking lot within 30 minutes of the call, without hesitation, without delay. As he entered the building, the staff looked up, not because they recognized him, but because of the powerful presence that accompanied him. The company is threatened. He comes. A man rarely steps into places like this unless his life or company is at risk. She looks tiny, too tiny. Her IV line, he enters her room, opens the door, and stops. Hangs silently beside the bed. A small fluid. She looks tiny, too tiny. Her IV line hangs silently beside the bed, dripping into her arm like whispered apologies for what her body has endured. Her chest rises and falls with a labored rhythm. He slowly walks in, heavy footsteps, and sits down beside her. Then, he reaches out and gently takes for a long moment. He does nothing. Just watches her. Her hand is ice cold. He presses it then. He reaches out and gently takes her hand. Her hand is ice cold. He presses it between them, the way he remembers his mother did when he had a fever as a child. He closes his eyes. When Lily stirs 2 hours later, it's the warmth wrapped around her hand, and the first thing she sees is him. Her eyelids flutter, and the first thing she sees is him, Alexander, sitting there, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, hair slightly disheveled, as if he had run his hands through it too many times. What she whispers. I passed out. What she whispers. I passed out, he says, his voice tense. You are severely dehydrated, and you are severely dehydrated and malnourished. She blinks slowly. Malnourished. She blinks slowly. Oh, is that all you wanted to say? Is that all you wanted to say? His voice is choked, and when she turns to look at him, his eyes are darkened. His eyes are darkened. She tries to sit up, grimacing. It's nothing serious, just that I've pushed myself too hard. Serious. It's just that I've pushed myself too hard. A little bit, he snaps, then stands up abruptly. A little bit, he snaps, then stands. You work 2 jobs. You skip meals. Up abruptly. You work 2 jobs. You skip. You hardly sleep. Do you think that's okay? She grimaces again, not from pain, but from the sharpness of his tone. Alexander, no, he says, walking back and forth, his hands clenched at his sides. No, he says, walking back and forth, his hands. You should have told me. I would help. I don't want help, she replies sharply, and the air between them grows tense. He slowly turns to her. Lily's eyes are watery, her voice trembling, tense. He slowly turns to her. You've always taken care of yourself since you were 16. Trembling. You've always taken care of yourself. No one shows up. No one stays. Myself since I was 16 years old. No one shows up. And you don't want to owe me anything. You don't want me to see you as if you've broken, slowly moving toward her. She wipes her face in embarrassment. In embarrassment. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to break like this. Break like this. You are not broken. He gently says, you have held the world together with your bare hands. Held the world together with. She looks at him with a rough and bare gaze. Your bare hands. She looks at him with a rough gaze. He sits down beside her again, this time more slowly, and takes her hand into his. This time more slowly, and takes her hand into, but now he holds it tightly. No more, he gently says. The anger has disappeared, replaced by something deeper. The anger has disappeared, replaced by something from now on. Take care of your mind. She looks at him, astonished. Deeper. From now on. Take care of your mind. He doesn't speak like a man claiming ownership, but like someone making a promise, a vow. Doesn't speak like a man claiming tears roll down her cheeks, and she doesn't pull her hand away. Ownership. He speaks like a man who is, and for the first time in as long as she can remember, Lily felt seen, cared for, out, and for the first time in as long as not because she asked for it, not because she deserved it, but simply because someone refused to let her suffer alone. The move happened without any conversation, no formal moment, no proposal, no labeled boxes or signed agreements. No formal moment, no one evening. Alexander offered to drive Lily to her apartment, and she simply said, I don't really live there anymore. Do I? He nodded once, and from that moment, her belongings began to quietly appear in his space. They never spoke about it. They just adjusted. Her surgical scrubs folded next to his suit in the closet. Adjusted. Her surgical scrubs folded next to her toothbrush lay next to his toothbrush in the bathroom, his suit in the closet. Her toothbrush. He cleared a drawer in the kitchen for her tea and left a cozy blanket on the couch because she was always cold. However, there were no whispered I love yous, no candlelit dinners, no tightly hugging her while sleeping. No candlelit dinners, no tightly hugging at night. He lay on the couch. At first, she thought it was courtesy. Then maybe it was discomfort. Lying on the couch. At first, she thought that. Then, she realized he was afraid of something he couldn't name. He was learning to be close, but he was slow at it. Something he couldn't name. Alexander expressed affection through unspoken gestures. Every time Lily worked the night shift, her favorite warm meal would be waiting in the staff fridge with a note stuck to it. Please eat. A picture of her. A candid shot he took when she was smiling in Central Park was framed on his desk in the office where no one else ever stepped in. Once, she forgot her coat at home. A courier showed up at her hospital with a brand new, tailored, elegant, and overly expensive coat. He never said, I miss you, but he started canceling meetings just to drive her to work. She knew he cared, but she didn't know if he understood what that meant because there was still a wall, a silence, a soft wall that she couldn't climb over. He never said how he felt, never reached for her in public, never once asked her to stay in his bed. Not because he didn't want her, but perhaps because he didn't know how to need anyone out loud. And that silence gradually wore her down. One evening, Lily returned home from her shift and found the apartment as quiet as usual. Dim lights. A crackling fire in the fireplace. Usual. Dim lights. A fire. Her favorite book lay on the armrest of the sofa right where she left it. But he wasn't there. She saw him in the office, staring out the window. There. She saw him in the office. His mother's picture next to him. A picture of herself just inches away. His mother's picture next to him. A picture of herself just. She stepped inside, her voice gentle. You always look at that picture when something is wrong. He didn't turn around. That picture when something is wrong. It helps me remember what his silence was long. That people like you and me still exist. She swallowed hard. What his silence was long. That people, Alexander, she whispered. What are we doing like you and me still exist? Finally. He looked at her. What do you mean, swallowed hard? Alexander. She gestured between them. We live together. We talk. We eat together. Looked at her. What do you mean, but we don't touch? We don't say anything at all. She signaled between them. We live. I don't even know if you want me here. Together. We talk. We eat together. But I want you here. He spoke too quickly. We don't touch. We don't say anything. So why do I feel like I'm a guest in your life? I want you here. He spoke too quickly. So her voice choked. "Why don't you let me in? Why do I feel like I'm a guest in?" He looked down, jaw clenched, because once he lets people in, they will leave. They will leave. "I am not a person," she said. "I am me. I am not a person," she said. "I am me. I know." His voice was low. "That's what makes everything harder." "No." His voice was low. "That's what." She looked at him for a long time, then gently said, "I love you, Alexander. I think I've loved you for a while now." He looked at her, eyes wide, but he said nothing. "Alexander, I think I've loved you for a while now." The silence stretched on too long, and that was when she knew. He looked at her, eyes wide, but he said nothing. She nodded slowly with a sad smile. "Anything." The silence stretched on too long. "It's okay," she whispered. "You don't have to say it, but I can't keep waiting for a man who can't decide whether he's allowed to feel or not." She turned and walked out of the office. That night, she packed her things. He didn't stop her. He stood in the hallway, one hand on the doorframe, lips parted. Didn't stop her. He stood and his whole body was tense as if fighting something ancient and unyielding. Lips parted, his whole body was tense as if, but he said nothing. When the door closed behind her, the silence in the apartment changed. He said nothing. When the door closed, it was no longer soft, it was shattering. Behind her, the silence in the silence she left was deafening. For days, Alexander moved through his penthouse apartment as if in a daze. Was deafening. For days. The fire in the fireplace burned low. Her blanket still lay on the couch. Her teacup still sat in the sink. Her scent lingered on his coat, and he found himself standing in the doorway, searching for her without even trying. His coat. And he found himself standing in meetings passed by without him focusing. Meetings passed by without him focusing. Investors called and were ignored. A multi-million-dollar merger has been postponed, something he had never done in 15 years of business. Postponed, something he had never done. His assistant gently knocked on his office door one afternoon. Knocked gently on his office door one Mr. Reed. "The Tokyo board is waiting for your confirmation." He stared at the picture on his desk. At the picture on his desk. The picture of Lily. A picture he couldn't bear to move himself. Lily. A picture he couldn't bear to cancel it. He said. The assistant blinked. "Move. Cancel it." He said. "Sir." I said. "Cancel it." Then he stood up, took his coat, and left the building without saying another word, and left the building without saying another. He needed to find her. By the time he reached the hospital, it was too late. Word. He needed to find her. Snow began to fall again, lightly but steadily. By the time he reached the hospital, it was too late. The snow. The city was noisy around him as he walked through the sliding door, steadily. The city was noisy around him as the air inside was sterile and bright, completely unlike the warmth she used to bring. The warmth she used to bring. At the reception desk, he asked to see her. The nurse glanced at the screen and frowned. Lily Bennett. She moved away 2 weeks ago. His heart sank. Frowned. Lily Bennett. She moved away. Moved away, yes, the nurse politely said while still distracted. Moved away, yes. The nurse. She no longer works at this facility. Politely said while still distracted. She no longer works here, and she did not leave a forwarding address. He stood there for a long time, stunned. At this facility, he stood there for a hallway full of patients, doctors rushing by, the beeping of machines. But he heard no sounds at all. She didn't even say goodbye. He muttered, "Sounds at all." She didn't even say goodbye. He, the nurse, looked up with a sympathetic expression. Muttered. The nurse looked up with, "You are family. Aren't you?" A sympathetic expression. "You are family. Aren't you?" He paused. "No," he said softly. Paused. "No," he said softly. I guess not." He stepped outside, the biting cold air piercing through him. Not. He stepped outside, the biting cold snowflakes falling onto his coat and melting away without a trace. Onto his coat and melting away without a trace. He stepped out into the hospital courtyard and paused in the middle, surrounded by silent benches and bare trees. His chest tightened. He looked up at the sky, tears welling in his eyes before he could stop them. "She is the only one," he whispered, his voice choked, "who makes me feel human." And the snow continued to fall, choked. "Who makes me feel winter returned to New York with the quiet sound of falling snow and a softness that made the city feel gentler." the quiet sound of falling snow, and a softness that made it had been a year since Lily left, a year since she departed from the man who still had not learned to express love in words, departed from the man who still had not. Now she was different, stronger, more confident. Learned to express love in words. Now she, as the head nurse at a small hospital in northern New York, she was respected and trusted by everyone, as the head nurse at a small hospital in the but on quiet nights, with a cup of tea in hand, she still thought of him. Trusted, but on quiet nights, with a cup, I still wonder if he is looking for her. Still feels the echo of the words he never said. Then the call came. Her aunt had a mild stroke, and Lily returned to the city to care for her. Then the call came. Her aunt had. She moved into a small rental near the Upper East Side, telling herself it was only temporary. On a snowy morning, she wandered through familiar streets and instinctively stepped into a small flower shop she once loved. It was the place where long ago she had seen Alexander picking flowers for a child. The bell rang. He stood there, turned away. The bell rang. He stood there, facing away from her, tall and still, holding a white tulip from the display. Standing still, he turned around. Their eyes met, and she stood still. He turned around. Their eyes met, and in that moment the whole world seemed to hold its breath. Alexander looked older, wiser, gentler. Alexander looked older, wiser, gentler, yet still completely himself. Gently placed the bouquet down and stepped toward. He gently placed the bouquet down and stepped toward her. Her, close but not too close. You will close but not too close. You will come with me, he said, his voice deep. Those words echoed from a year ago, but now carried something raw, something real, something real. He paused, eyes steady. He paused, eyes steady. If you still want to, I've never stopped waiting. Waiting. Tears streamed down before she could stop them. She could stop them. She nodded, not. She nodded, speechless. He carefully took her hand with reverence, as if afraid it would disappear. But when their fingers touched, it was a certainty of someone who had learned what loss was and would never risk it again. She went home, not to a penthouse apartment, but to a he took her home, not to a penthouse apartment, but to a cozy apartment on the edge of Central Park, a space filled with greenery, soft light, and little details whispering her name, her blanket, her picture, her blanket, her picture. Her presence was always kept close to her. Everything, she whispered. You have kept everything. She whispered. I have kept you, he said. 6 months later, I have kept you, he said. 6 months later. They got married on a warm summer morning in the garden at the house that Alexander had renovated. Laughter echoed throughout the aisle. The laughter filled the air. Laughter ringing out through the aisle. Close friends, colleagues, former patients, friends. The guests were few, but very close. Colleagues, former patients, friends who had witnessed their story. Among them was the elderly man whom Lily had once cared among them was the elderly man whom Lily had cared for at a hospital fundraiser. Just then, Alexander truly saw her. The ceremony. She had always been an angel. He stood up to speak at the ceremony, said through tears. Now she had found she had always been an angel, he said through tears, her guardian. Alexander vowed, now she has found her guardian. Alexander swore without notes. He said that before meeting her. He didn't know how to love, but he promised he said that before meeting her. He didn't know how to love, but he promised to learn every day. Alongside her, her cheek, his voice soft. We will. Lily touched his cheek, her voice gentle. We will learn together. That night, long after the last guest had left and the candles had gone out, they sat wrapped in a blanket on their new porch, listening to the stillness of the summer storm in the distance. In the distance. Lily leaned towards him and smiled. Lily leaned towards him and smiled. I never thought that a cold night at the bus station would bring me home. Alexander kissed her hair, his voice whispering in the wind. In the wind. That night, he said. That night, I didn't save you. He gently turned her face towards him. Towards him. You saved me. And you saved me. And that's the story of a cold night. A silent man. And the woman who taught him how to love. A silent man and the woman who taught. If this journey moved you as deeply as it moved us, we invite you to stand with the main character, not just with empathy, but with encouragement. What would you say to them if they were sitting across from you right now? What advice would you give for their next steps? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your words matter more than you know. And if stories like this speak to your heart, Don't forget to subscribe to Touching Tales Hub. Your support helps us continue bringing you stories that heal, inspire, and connect us all.